Welcome back to the Off the Ball podcast. I'm your host, Clay Tillman, and on today's episode, we are going to be breaking down a fantastic Sunday night game, Lions versus Texans. And then tonight, we have the Miami Dolphins versus the LA Rams, which should, statistically, be another show. Let's first hop right in to last night's game, Lions versus Texans. I thought Texans had this in the bag after the first half. They were up pretty big, and I didn't expect a comeback, especially the way Jared Goff played. But Lions did come back, and they won 26-23 in a unbelievable performance. Not a good performance whatsoever from a potential MVP in Jared Goff. And let's run through the Lions box score and really annotate this. So Jared Goff last night had probably one of the worst performances through the air that I've seen in a while from a quarterback. It wasn't he threw 2 touchdowns, he had 240 yards, was 15 for 30, only threw 50% from had a 50% completion percentage, but had 5 picks with all of that, and they still were able to win. So with those 5 picks that Jared Goff had, they were still able to find a way to win, and that was because, and I'll get to that in a little bit when I talk about the Texans, but that was because the Texans couldn't convert anything in the second half, but we'll get into that when I talk about the Texans. Let's hold off and let's just talk about the Lions for right now. But we have David Montgomery as well with Jahmyr Gibbs, probably the best running back duo in the NFL. I don't know who can argue with that. It's a pretty good dang duo. But David Montgomery last night, 12 carries, 32 yards, and a touchdown. Also, Sam Laporta had a good game. I really haven't seen much from Sam Laporta this season, but I finally got to see Sam Laporta play. And he had a really good game. 3 receptions, 66 yards with 1 touchdown. And also Amon-Ra St. Brown, who has been, in my opinion, a fantastic player, not just for the Lions, but for their team this year. Had 6 receptions for 60 yards and 1 touchdown. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I want to talk about him for just a few minutes, but he's had a touchdown in 8 consecutive games, which is an unbelievable statistic. He is very valuable for this team. I'd say ever since they got Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown has gotten a lot more noticed in his game. It's almost as if any quarterback, or not quarterback, any wide receiver, they are obviously going to perform better when they're under a quarterback who's good. And we see this in Jared Goff. Jared Goff is a great quarterback. He may have not had a fantastic game last night, even though they got the win, but Jared Goff overall is a really good quarterback. So for your wide receiver 1, you're going to see a lot from him. And that's who Amon-Ra Brown has kind of turned into. He's a Pro Bowler. He's an all-pro type of wide receiver, and he's doing a heck of a job for Detroit and is definitely helping them a lot to push for a Super Bowl this year. They are my pick to win the Super Bowl. I think they have a high chance, not just to win, to make it. I don't think they'll win it, but to make the Super Bowl, he is definitely going to help them through the playoffs, definitely through the remainder of the regular season. But he has been a big help through the air and has been their definite proven wide receiver 1 for a minute now. He has set a franchise mark at 7 consecutive games with a receiving touchdown. And this has broken a tie between not just himself from the 2021-22 season, but we got Leon Hart from 1951 and Herman Moore from 1994. This is just some history of the Lions and what Amon-Ra St. Brown has done for this Lions team. Has been their best receiver since Calvin Johnson has been on their team. Obviously, Calvin Johnson he's a top 5 wide receiver all time. He left a legacy and a dent in that organization, which has put him in the banners as one of the greatest wide receivers, not only for the Lions, but of all time. And now Amon-Ra St. Brown is definitely leaving a mark in this on this team, and is definitely a value for their team in general and in overall. Like I said, 7 consecutive games with a receiving touchdown. He's a machine when it comes to receiving touchdowns. And Jared Goff obviously is a big help and step in that. But obviously in this game, Jared Goff didn't perform well. But it doesn't matter. There's 2 sides of the ball. And I think the Lions did a pretty good job defensively, especially in the second half, preventing the Texans from even scoring at all. And which led to had 2 interceptions in the second half. CJ Stroud threw them. But overall, they did a good job in the second half defensively. One person is that I want to hit on as well for the Lions is their kicker, who basically sealed the game. I promise you, 2 times, there's 2 instances in this game where Jake Bates, their kicker, kissed the goalpost. He nudged it, and it was so close from it hitting the pole. The laces of the football, I promise you, probably touched the goalpost. It was close. It kissed it, but he hit a 52-yard field goal to win the game. And in the same game, he hit a 58-yard field goal with 5 minutes left to tie. Unbelievable game from him, and just how he helped the team in clutch periods. For kickers at all, man, I would hate being a kicker in the NFL. One, a lot of pressure and stress is built into your system when it comes to, man, I have to kick a field goal to win the game. Or I have to kick a field goal just to tie the game with 5 minutes left. And if you're kicking from 50 plus yards, that's a difficult task to do. And Jake Bates was able to do that, which is a big reason and the reason why they won the game last night. He's the first kicker to, there hasn't been a kicker to kick more than 50 plus yards or kick a 50 plus yard field goal with under 6 minutes left in the game. The last person to do it was a guy named Matthew Wright for the Jags in 2021. So he's the last kicker to do this, and he is the reason they won the game. A game-winning field goal kick, and also a 50-yard field goal with 5 minutes left remaining to win the game. Especially giving the ball to CJ Stroud and who this Texans offense is, and Nico Collins coming back, John Mechie III, Tank Dell, Joe Mixon. They have a great offense. They have a really good offense. So giving the ball to a team with 5 minutes left, man, they're going to take a lot of time off the clock. But, man, that defense, that Lions defense that we've seen all year, even though Aiden Hutchinson, their pass rusher, is out for the remainder of the season, they're able to continue to compete defensively. Brian Branch was a good draft pick last year, has been very valuable defensively. They just picked up Zadarius Smith. He's made a couple Pro Bowls back when he played for the Packers. Just got traded from the Browns. So he's a valuable veteran that they picked up, who is a good defensive player who's able to get sacks. He did it in Wisconsin, and he should be a good veteran and leader for this Lions team that's young. That's very young. But other than that, Lions did good in the second half. in the first half, it was very raw. We didn't see much from anybody. They had one touchdown. Jared Goff didn't do well at all. But in the second half, they really stepped up. Dan Campbell did his thing. I think Dan Campbell's a fantastic coach, man. He's a fantastic leader. He's positive. He's mature. We are seeing this Lions team grow each and every week. And they're getting better each and every week. And they are going to make a Super Bowl. If it's not this year, I think it will be. But if it's not this year, we are going to see them make a Super Bowl in the next 5 years. It could be a situation where it's like the Green Bay Packers. Man, I'm a Packers fan, but with Rodgers, with MVP Rodgers, we were the best team in the league. 13-3, 12-4. We were the best team in the NFC, but we can never get it done in the playoffs. This could be a scenario for the Lions. I don't think so. Man, they made the NFC Championship last year, almost beat a fantastic offense in the 49ers and a fantastic defense in the 49ers, and they're going to do it again. I don't see them being any worse than last year. I see them being better, and if they made the NFC Championship last year, I wouldn't be surprised if they make the Super Bowl this year, and I think they're the best team offensively, not just in the NFC, potentially in the whole NFL. I think teams like the Ravens compete with them. Kansas City is sneaking up there. They've had a few games in the past few weeks that have looked promising for them. I mean, they're still freaking undefeated. They almost lost to the Broncos yesterday, but they're still undefeated, and they're still looking like they're going to be a Super Bowl favorite again. But my prediction is a Ravens-Lions Super Bowl, and this Lions team is dangerous, scary, and they will be a threat in the NFC for many years to come. Many, many years. So it's cool to see. It's very cool to see, especially as a Packers fan who has laughed, who has mocked this Lions team for years because they've been terrible. I have some respect for them because they are looking dangerous, and I think Dan Campbell, again, is a fantastic coach. I like Jared Goff. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I like their defense, and I like their running duo. They are a close to perfect team. Close to perfect team. They play the Jags on Sunday. Shouldn't be any concern during that game. I think they're going to blow them out. Jags aren't a good team. They're tied with the Titans as probably the worst team in the league. So not much problem there. I think they'll get that win. Moving on to the Texans. So bad second half from the Houston Texans. Bad second half. They've looked pretty bad this month. The past month, they've looked pretty bad. They have won one of their last 4 games. And I don't know what the exact problem is. It could be injuries on the offensive side. I mean, Nico Collins just came back. Stephon Diggs is out. So, I mean, CJ Stroud has struggled a little bit, has kind of been in a drought lately. But here's the box score for the Texans from last night. 19 for 33, CJ Stroud. 19 for 33, 232 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. Joe Mixon didn't have a big of a game running. They didn't have a good run game at all. Last night, they were under 2 yards per carry. He had 25 carries, 46 yards, and 1 touchdown. Was under 2 yards a carry last night, Joe Mixon. And then their leading receiver, excuse me, their leading receiver, John Mechie III, 5 receptions, 74 yards, and 1 touchdown. Now, I said this a minute ago. Their second half offense was literally a ghost. They didn't show up at all. Had a great first half, and then in the second half, I don't know what happened. The Lions defense just completely stepped up, and they had 2 interceptions in the second half. They averaged this season, they really haven't been an exceptional second half team. They've only averaged 9.1 points in the second half. That's it. A touchdown and a field goal. Less than that. They haven't even averaged a touchdown and a field goal. They've averaged less than that. This season, last night's game, they had a season low with 0 points in the second half. Here is how the possessions went for the Texans. Get this. Interception, punt, interception, 3 punts in a row, and a missed field goal. It was pitiful. And like I said, they've lost 3 of their last 4 games. So the last month, they've been abysmal. They are lucky that their division is garbage. You have the Colts, who are struggling quarterback-wise. Anthony Richardson has been benched. Joe Flacco hasn't looked good. You go over to the Titans. Man, they have another quarterback problem. Will Levis, Mason Rudolph. They're going to have to draft a quarterback because none of them are starters. And then you move over to Jacksonville. Man, Trevor Lawrence didn't play yesterday. They've been bad offensively and defensively. They have just looked like a terrible team, and the division is garbage. So luckily, this Texans team, who, yes, has struggled this month, is in a terrible division, which has helped them. Helped them a lot because they are leading the division, and they haven't looked good this month at all. It was an absolute interception overload this whole game. On both teams. I mean, Jared Goff, 5 interceptions, and CJ Stroud, 2 interceptions. They combined for 7 interceptions. It's been the most since 2018. A defense in the defense of the Texans forced more picks in a primetime game since Drew Brees in 2012. Whoever Drew Brees played in 2012, that defense has a huge comparison to the defense that the Texans showed last night. Even though they lost and gave up a remarkable amount of unanswered points, they were able to force picks. I believe it was 3 in the first half and 2 in the second half. I believe that's what it was. But it was an absolute interception overload on both sides of the ball. And one guy who has stuck out to me last night on the Texans is their rookie, Kamari Lassiter. He had 2 interceptions. He's had 3 on the year. But as a cornerback, he holds QBs to a 62 passer rating, and when his opponents are targeted, he averages, or a quarterback averages, a 42.5% completion rate when targeted, played against Kamari Lassiter, who's been an exceptional rookie cornerback. Defensively has been great. Is he in the talks of offense? I mean, not offense, defensive rookie of the year. I mean, you have Jared Verse, you have Quinion Mitchell, you have the guy from the Colts. You have all these other players who are looking pretty good. It hasn't been an exceptional defensive class. It's been a great offensive class, but a defensive class, it hasn't been great. But this Kamari Lassiter guy has been kind of in the shadow. And I think he should get a little bit more recognition because he's looked great. 3 interceptions on the year, 2 just in this game. He is my props for a potential defensive rookie of the year. But it'll probably go to Jared Verse, who has done an exceptional job as well defensively. But he had a heck of a game, and his percentage when his opponents are targeted is great. Well under 50%. And allows a 62 passer rating, which is really, really good. But Cowboys and Texans play November 18th, Monday night. Cowboys have been a slump fest this season. Dak Prescott out for the season. CeeDee Lamb has just been angered by this team. Mike McCarthy, they need to get rid of him. Jerry Jones, I think he's terrible. He's not a good he may be the greatest owner of all time, but I don't know what's happening over in Dallas. It functions as it's like a circus. It functions as a circus. Like 1 week they'll be good, 1 week they won't. It's goofy. I don't know what's going on. Their run game is abysmal. Their savior is CeeDee Lamb. Dak Prescott, they paid him big bucks for literally nothing. He has been atrocious. This team is in a complete rebuild. They're not going to make the playoffs. Their divisions is too overpowered. I mean, you have Washington and you have the Eagles, who are in a bounce back. Washington has been very stable this season, and Cowboys just can't recover. They won't be able to recover now that Dak is out. But they have just been in a spot where they have just looked completely unhinged, and they are looking like a circus. It's crazy over in Dallas. It's crazy. But Texans, I think they'll have no problem against Dallas. But yeah, let's move on to the Dolphins versus Rams preview for tonight. And I want to start off with the Dolphins offense from last week. These are some offensive stats that we've seen this season from the Dolphins, but also last week. So they average 20, I mean, not average. They've put up 27 points in back-to-back games. This season alone, they have been the second worst team in points per game, only averaging 15.5 points per game. And this is kind of not surprising, really. Tua's been out, and their offense hasn't done anything. I mean, we're looking at Tyreek Hill, who isn't even on the leaderboards for receptions. Jalen Waddle had a very interesting game last week. I mean, look at this. This is crazy. 2 targets, 2 receptions, -4 yards and a touchdown. Like, unbelievable stat line that you rarely see. I've never seen a stat line like that in my life. It's a once-in-a-lifetime stat line. But Tua is back, and they still haven't won a game. They haven't looked great, but Tua is trying to kind of shaking off some rust from his concussion injury. But last game, I mean, he had a great game. He had 321 yards, 2 touchdowns, 8.3 yards per attempt, and 125 passer rating. And they played the Bills. And this Bills team this year, I mean, Josh Allen has looked like a legitimate MVP candidate. They're doing things offensively that we didn't think they were going to do this season. I mean, they picked up Amari Cooper. James Cook is back. They have a decent defense, but Josh Allen has really carried that load. And they didn't do a bad job against the Dolphins. I mean, against the Bills. They lost by 3. Bills win 30-27, and they're coming back. I promise you. And against this game, I think they'll win against the Rams. I mean, it's going to be a heck of an offensive game. I mean, Rams are healthy. They won a Super Bowl with this team. I mean, now they have Puka Nacua, so they have a fantastic receiver duo in Nacua and Kupp, and then Kyron Williams, who's a great running back. But other than that, this Dolphins team is getting back in the swing of things. They're looking more comfortable. Tua's looking more comfortable, but they're going to get back into the swing of things, and I think we'll see it in this game tonight. But other than that, Tyreek Hill in Week 9 had 5 targets, 4 receptions, 80 yards. And like I said, Jalen Waddle's stat line was wild. Devon Achane, it seems like the Dolphins are now figuring out their run game. I feel like they started a lot slower this year in their run game. I mean, Raheem Mostert hasn't done anything. Devon Achane, I mean, we saw him last year. He looked fantastic. But we really haven't seen anything from him this season, except for last game. He had 12 attempts or 12 carries, 63 yards, averaged 5.3 yards per carry on 1 touchdown. And also, Raheem Mostert had a good game. 10 carries, 56 yards, averaging a little over 5.5 yards per carry. So, run game looked swell, and the receiving game looked good. They just went up against a good offense in the Bills. And the defense of the Dolphins isn't the best defense ever. I mean, last game they gave up 235 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception to Josh Allen. So Josh Allen was able to thrive through the air, had 3 touchdowns on 1 interception, but they just weren't able to compete against their division rival. And I'm not surprised. I mean, this Bills team has looked fantastic all season long. All season long, they've looked fantastic. They just beat the Colts. They're looking like a legitimate threat in the AFC. I mean, the AFC is very dangerous this season. You have Chiefs. You have the Bills. I mean, other than the Bills, you have the Ravens. You have the Texans. So they're looking like, you have the Steelers. So the Dolphins have a lot to deal with. When it comes to this competitiveness in the AFC. And same with the Bills. But other than that, the pass defense or the offensive line of the Dolphins did really well. 1 sack taken on 28 pass attempts. And Tua he averaged 2.5 seconds time to throw. And that's below average this season. He was able to get passes out super quick in the pocket and was able to do it on a efficient level. Was really able to do it. I mean, he threw 124.9 passer rating. So it was very accurate, very efficient, and was able to get the job done. They got 27 points against the Bills. So they did good offensively, and that offensive line did great, only allowing 1 sack on 28 passing attempts. But moving on to the Rams, want to hit on them. They're now completely healthy. Their offense hasn't been good at all this season. I know Cooper Kupp was hurt. I know Puka Nacua was hurt. So they've really been struggling offensively, and the stats show it. I mean, they're averaging 21 points per game. That's 21st in the NFL. On third downs, they're 23rd. And in the red zone conversions, they're 25th. So they're 7th from the lowest. So they haven't looked good offensively. And they are going to progress and get better. You have 2 threats, a wide receiver 1 in Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp, who they can interchange. I mean, they're both fantastic wide receivers. They can change. It doesn't matter. They're already studs. They're going to be great, and they match up well. They match up well against any defender, and they've just been doing great things. So even though their offense statistically is low, I mean, 25th in red zone, bad. 23rd in third downs, bad. 21st points per game. If you're anywhere above top 15, like top 20 and up, or top 15 and up, you're not very good. You're below mid. And that's who this Rams offense is, and that's what we've seen this season. But you're healthy again. Kyron Williams is playing. Cooper Kupp is playing. DeMarcus Robinson had a good game. Their offensive line did well again, last game. I mean, they've allowed 0 sacks. Not just last game, the past 2 games. They've allowed 0 sacks in back-to-back games. Their tackle, Rob Havenstein, got injured with an ankle injury, so that's going to hurt a little bit, but it isn't a problem. You're healthy with your wide receiver core is healthy. You have a run game. They're going to connect, and they're going to do good. I mean, Demarcus Robinson, week 9, had 9 targets, 6 receptions, 94 yards, 2 touchdowns. He's performed great in the past few weeks. Cooper Kupp last week, 14 targets, 11 receptions, 104 yards. We are now seeing the Cooper Kupp that we saw a few years ago who led the league in receiving yards. And then Kyron Williams had an all right game, 22 attempts, 69 yards, only 3.1 yards per carry. But they really don't need to rely. They don't need to rely on the run game because their wide receiver core and Demarcus Robinson at a 3 and 2 guys who are Pro Bowlers. You have a threatening offense with a potential future Hall of Fame quarterback in Matt Stafford, very debatable in that situation, but he's won a Super Bowl. He was a fantastic quarterback for the Lions. Won a Super Bowl with LA. Great coaching staff and Sean McVay. This team is good. I mean, heck, their division is crazy right now. I mean, Cardinals are looking like a solid team. They continue to get better each and every week. 49ers, they're looking healthy now. I mean, Christian McCaffrey's returning. He didn't have a fantastic game yesterday, but he hasn't played in 6-7 freaking weeks. So 9 weeks. So he's washing all the rust off. He's going to get back into things. George Kittle is unbelievable. I mean, you look at this guy and you see a mirror reflection of somebody like Rob Gronkowski, a future Hall of Fame tight end, one of the greatest to ever do it at the tight end spot. And George Kittle this season is looking like the best tight end, probably the best tight end this season and last season as well. He's unbelievable. He's talented. He's a unicorn. He's a one of one. And they're looking great. I mean, they have Deebo Samuel. With Brandon Ayuk being out, it's kind of been a little bit of a problem, been a bit controversial with how much they paid Brandon Ayuk, but they're really focusing on winning. They play the Seahawks next week, the 49ers, so they own the Seahawks. So they're going to start winning again, and it's going to be a competitive division. That division is going to be competitive. You have the Seahawks. You now have the Rams who are healthy. Cardinals are looking good. That's a underrated division that I would look at with only 6 weeks remaining in the NFL. I think it's going to be competitive, and I think it can go down to the wire when it comes to which team will win the division and which team could potentially get that wild card spot. But other than that, Rams defense hasn't really been – their pass rush has been top 15, but their pass D has been pretty bad. I mean, last week, Geno Smith had 3 touchdowns on 3 interceptions. He had a 90, a little bit over a 90 passer rating. And for the whole season, they've allowed a 96.5 passer rating. That's 24th in the NFL. One thing they've been doing good is in the past 3 games, they've held teams to under 21 points a game, which has been good in my opinion for this Rams defense. It has been good. This season they've held teams to about 24 points per game. That's tied 22nd in the NFL. So they have struggled a little bit defensively because they're in the bottom half, or almost the bottom third, the bottom half of when it comes to defense and allowing points. Their pass rush has been pretty good. They're tied 13th. Last game they were sack heavy. They allowed 7 sacks. on 34 passing attempts, and this season they have 21 sacks in total, which they are tied 13th in. So they've looked good when it comes to that. And Jared Verse is a potential defensive rookie of the year candidate. So he's going to be kind of a threat potentially in the near future. But this season, he's done very well for them. The rush defense, they did really well rush defensively against the Seahawks last week. They kept Kenneth Walker to only 3.3 yards per carry on the I'm sorry. I don't know what I'm saying. On 83 yards. My bad. But their defense, the rush defense did look really well against the Seahawks. And then as they go up against the Dolphins, Devon Achane and Raheem Mostert, we'll see what their pass defense can do. We'll see how well that offensive line can do. I know, man, Tua is hanging by a thread when it comes to potentially retiring from the NFL because how much concussions he can get. The last week, Rams were sack heavy. So if they're going to be threatening against Tua, so Tua's going to have to get the ball out fast. I believe he will because he did it in last week's game. I mean, 2.5 yards second in the pocket and then let the ball be gone. Like that's what he did. So if he can do that again, I mean, you're relying on a guy like Tyreek Hill, who's a future Hall of Fame wide receiver. Jalen Waddle, who's an up-and-coming star. They're good. They're good, man. They have a good wide receiver core. So it's going to be a competitive game offensively. I think it's going to be high scoring. My prediction, I think, man, I want to see the Dolphins win. So I think Dolphins win 27-24. We'll see what happens. But that is the end of the podcast. I hope y'all enjoyed my voice. I don't know if you can tell is about to leave. But hope y'all enjoy. If you did, make sure to follow all my socials. TikTok, Off the Ball with Clay Tillman. Instagram, Off the Ball with Clay Tillman as well. That's where I post reels and updates on my podcast. Please go follow those if you enjoy any of my stuff. Thank you all for listening. Continue to share, continue to show love, and I appreciate you all. I'll see you next time on the Off the Ball podcast. Have a good day.